I'm Andy Patton, and this is Rhyme and Reason from the Rabbit Room. Each season we look at the life and work of one poet, starting with Gerard Manley Hopkins. When Hopkins became a Jesuit in 1868, he burned his poetry and swore off making any more. Then followed nearly a decade of poetic silence in which he wrote little to no poetry. That is, until a ship called the Deutschland ran aground off the coast of England. Hopkins later tells the story in a letter. This is what he wrote. "What I had written I burnt before I became a Jesuit, and resolved to write no more, as not belonging to my profession. So for 7 years I wrote nothing. But when, in the winter of 75, the Deutschland was wrecked in the mouth of the Thames, and the 5 Franciscan nuns, exiles from Germany by the Falk laws aboard her, were drowned, I was affected by the account, and happening to say so to my rector, he said that he wished someone would write a poem on the subject. On this, I set to work. The poem that came pouring out of him was made of 35 8-line stanzas, and it was charged with such an innovative use of the English language, the likes of which has rarely been seen since, let alone in 1875. Paul Mariani, a poet and one of Hopkins' biographers, asked of the wreck of the Deutschland, where did this tapped energy come from? How long had it lain dormant, waiting for this moment to be released like a spring shower after a long winter? And Mariani then calls it an inexorable grace, the sudden, unexplained, 100-fold resurrection of his precious, long-silenced poetic gift. Now, before we hear the poem, I want to mention a few things about its structure. It has 35 8-line stanzas, so it's a long poem, almost 300 lines in total. It's written in 2 parts. Both parts reference the wreck, but the first part is more autobiographical, also taking up the theme of Hopkins' own conversion and spiritual experience, while the second part focuses on the action and the aftermath of the wreck itself. Margaret Ellsberg writes that this dual structure mirrors, quote, Hopkins' sense of his own internal catastrophe. So, he writes himself into the poem and takes head-on not only the event of the shipwreck, but also his own, sometimes turbulent, sometimes ecstatic experience of God as well. I'm going to read you some lines that illustrate what I mean. In the first part, you'll get autobiographical lines like these. I did say yes, O at lightning and lashed rod. Thou heardst me, truer than tongue confess, thy terror, O Christ, O God. And you'll also get lines like these. Beyond saying sweet, past telling of tongue, thou art lightning and love. I found it a winter and warm. Father and fondler of heart, thou hast rung. So he's talking about God, and he's talking about himself, his own conversion, and his own wrestling, storm-racked spirituality. He's speaking in first person. He's talking about his confession of faith as though he were lashed by lightning. He calls God Father, but also calls him terror. He calls him lightning and love. He says God is a fondler of heart, but the heart God holds is also a heart he has wrung. And the second section of the poem focuses on the wreck itself, and you get lines that are almost poetic narrative like these. On Saturday sailed from Bremen, American outward bound. Take settler and seaman, tell men with the women, 200 souls in the round. O Father, not under thy feathers, nor ever is guessing the goal was a shoal, of a fourth the doom to be drowned. The plot of the poem, as it were, is, as the title indicates, the wreck of the Deutschland itself. And it's a scene of unfolding chaos. Bodies are swinging from ropes, being dashed against the waves. The passengers have taken to the rigging, because braving the icy wind and rain means being safe from the raging sea. Hopkins describes the cutting cold as wiry and white fiery. People are calling out to God throughout the night as others are swept out to sea, pulled down into the, quote, widow-making, unchilding, unfathering deeps. If the plot of the poem is the wreck, the meanings of the poem go far beyond the stage action of the shipwreck. Hopkins fits a lot in. He fits the cruelty of nature and the mystery of that cruelty overseen by a good, wise, and loving God. He fits the terror of conversion and yet the desire to belong wholly and only to one's Maker. And the slow, perilous thrum of God's hammer and anvil work in our hearts. The poem displays the rich beauty of God's creation, even in dire straits, even in the face of death. For all of its beauty, the wreck, like so much of Hopkins' poetry during his life, was roundly rejected by almost everyone who read it. It was passed over for publication. One of his friends said, "I wish those nuns had just stayed at home," which was really a clever and cutting way to say, "I do not care for this poem." Robert Bridges, one of Hopkins' closest friends, said that he would not read it again for any money. Hopkins responded to Bridges in a letter saying, "If it is obscure, do not bother yourself with the meaning, but pay attention to the best and most intelligible stanzas. If you had done this, you would have liked it better and sent me more serviceable criticism, but now your criticism is of no use, being only protest." And you can almost hear him pleading for a more compassionate reading. And he adds to Bridges, quote, "I do not write for the public. You are my public, and I hope to convert you." Now, presumably, Hopkins' poetry did eventually convert his friend, because after Hopkins' death, Bridges would be his most hearty champion, using his influence as poet laureate of England to get his friend's poetry, including The Wreck of the Deutschland, immortalized in print for all generations. Now, I'm going to read this long poem, and my advice to you would be to take Hopkins' advice to his friend. Let the sound of it roll over you. If it makes sense, great. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. You're just beginning to step into a relationship with this poem. There's no rush and there's no pressure. Like every great relationship, there is time for a deep knowing over a long, long acquaintance. So if this is your first time hearing The Wreck of the Deutschland, just experience it. Just listen. Don't try to connect all the dots. Don't try to come to the end of it saying, "Aha, I know what it all means." Because you won't. You won't get even much of it. Just begin the relationship. And now, with all of that in mind, here is The Wreck of the Deutschland. To the happy memory of 5 Franciscan nuns, exiles by the folk laws, drowned between midnight and morning of December 7th, 1875. Thou mastering me, God, giver of breath and bread, world's strand, sway of the sea, Lord of living and dead. Thou hast bound bones and veins in me, fastened me flesh, and after it almost unmade, what with dread thy doing? And dost thou touch me afresh? Over again I feel thy finger and find thee. I did say yes. Oh, at lightning and lashed rod, thou heardst me truer than tongue confess thy terror, O Christ, O God. Thou knowest the walls, altar, and hour and night, the swoon of a heart that the sweep and the hurl of thee trod hard down with horror of height, and the midriff, a strain, with leaning of, laced with fire of stress. The frown of his face before me, the hurdle of hell behind, where was a place? I whirled out wings that spell and fled with a fling of the heart to the heart of the host. My heart, but you were a dove winged, I can tell. Carrier witted, I am bold to boast, to flash from the flame to the flame, then tower from the grace to the grace. I am soft sift in an hourglass at the wall, fast, but mind with emotion adrift, and it crowds and it combs to the fall. I steady as a water in a well, to a poise, to a pain, but roped with always all the way down from the tall fells or flanks of the vole, a vein of the gospel proffer, a pressure, a principle, Christ's gift. I kiss my hand to the stars, lovely asunder, starlight wafting him out of it, and glory and thunder, kiss my hand to the dappled with damson west. Since though he is under the world's splendor and wonder, his mystery must be stressed. For I greet him the days I meet him, and bless when I understand. Not out of his bliss springs the stress felt, nor first from heaven, and few know this, swings the stroke dealt. Stroke and the stress that stars and storms deliver, that guilt is hushed by, hearts are flushed by and melt. But it rides time like riding a river, and here the faithful waver, the faithless fable and miss. It dates from day of his going in Galilee, warm-laid grave of a womb life gray, manger, maiden's knee, the dense and driven passion and frightful sweat, thence the discharge of it, there its swelling to be, though felt before, though in high flood yet, what none would have known of it, only the heart being hard at bay. Only the heart being hard at bay is out with it. Oh, we lash with the best or worst words last. How a lush-kept, plush-capped slow will mouth to flesh, burst, gush, flush the man, the being with it, sour or sweet, brim in a flash, full. Hither then, last or first, to hero of Calvary, Christ's feet. Never ask if meaning it, wanting it, warned of it men go. Be adored among men, God, three-numbered form, ring thy revel, dogged in den, man's malice with wrecking and storm. Beyond saying sweet, past telling of tongue, thou art lightning and love. I found it, a winter and warm. Father and fondler of heart thou hast wrung. Hast thy dark descending, and most merciful then. With anvil ding, and with fire in him, forge thy will, or rather than stealing as spring through him, melt him, but master him still. Whether at once, as once at a crash Paul, or as Austin, a lingering out sweet skill, make mercy in all of us, out of us all mastery, but be adored, King. Some find me a sword, some the flange and the rail, flame, fang, or flood, goes death on drum, and storms bugle his fame. But we dream, we are rooted in earth, dust, flesh falls within sight of us. We, though our flower the same, wave with the meadow, forget that there must the sour scythe cringe, and the blear share come. On Saturday, sailed from Bremen, American outward bound, take settler and seaman, fell men with the women, 200 souls in the round. O Father, not under thy feathers, nor ever as guessing the goal, was a shoal of a fourth, the doom to be drowned. Yet did the dark side of the bay of thy blessing not vault them, the million of rounds of thy mercy, not reeve even them in. Into the snows she sweeps, hurling the haven behind, the Deutschland, on Sunday, and so the sky keeps, for the infinite air is unkind, and the sea flint flake, black-backed in the regular blow, sitting east-northeast, in the cursed quarter, the wind wiry and white fiery, and the whirlwind swivelet snow, spins to the widow-making, unchilding, unfathering deeps. She drove in the dark to leeward. She struck, not a reef or a rock, but the combs of a smother of sand. Night drew her dead to the Kentish knock, and she beat the bank down with her bows and the ride of her keel. The breakers rolled on her beam with ruinous shock, and canvas and compass, the whirl and the wheel, idle forever to waft her or wind with her. These she endured. Hope had grown gray hairs. Hope had mourning on, trenched with tears, carved with cares. Hope was 12 hours gone. And frightful a nightfall folded rueful a day, nor rescue, only rocket and light ship shone, and lives at last were washing away. To the shrouds they took, they shook in the hurling and horrible airs. One stirred from the rigging to save the wild womankind below. With a rope's end round the man, handy and brave, he was pitched to his death at a blow. For all his dreadnought breast and braids of thew, they could tell him for hours, dandled the to and fro through the cobbled foam fleece. What could he do with the burl of the fountain of air, buck and the flood of the wave? They fought with God's cold, and they could not, and fell to the deck, crushed them, or water and drown them, or rolled with the sea romp over the wreck. Night roared with the heartbreak hearing a heartbroke rabble, the woman's wailing, the crying of child without check, till a lioness arose, breasting the babel, a prophetess towered in the tumult, a virginal tongue told. Ah, touched in your bower of bone are you, turned for an exquisite smart have you? Make words break from me here all alone, do you? Mother of being in me, heart, oh, unteachably after evil, but uttering truth. Why tears is it? Tears such a melting, a madrigal start, never eldering revel and river of youth. What can it be, this glee, the good you have there of your own? Sister, a sister calling a master, her master and mine, and the inboard seas run swirling and hauling, the rash smart sloggering brine blinds her. But she that weather sees one thing, one has one fetchner. She rears herself to the divine ears, and the call of the tall nun to the men in the tops, and the tackle rode over the storms brawling. She was first of a 5, and came of a coiffed sisterhood. O Deutschland, double a desperate name, O world wide of its good. But Gertrude, Lily, and Luther are 2 of a town, Christ's lily and beast of the waste wood. From life's dawn it is drawn down. Abel is Cain's brother, and breasts they have sucked the same. Loath for love men knew in them, banned by the land of their birth, Rhine refused them, Thames would ruin them, surf, snow, river, and earth gnashed, But thou art above, thou Orion of light. Thy unchancelling, poising palms were weighing the worth. Thou martyr master, in thy sight stormflakes were scroll-leaved flowers, lily showers. Sweet heaven was astrew in them. 5. The finding and sake and cipher of suffering Christ. Mark. The mark is of man's make, and the word of its sacrifice. But he scores it in scarlet himself, on his own bespoken, before time taken, dearest prized and priced, stigma, signal, cinquefoil token, for lettering of the lamb's fleece, ruddying of the rose flake. Joy fall to thee, Father Francis, drawn to the life that died, with the gnarls of the nails in thee, niche of the lance, his love-scape crucified, on the seal of his seraph arrival, and these thy daughters, and 5 lived and leaved favor and pride, are sisterly sealed in wild waters, to bathe in his fall gold mercies, to breathe in his all-fire glances. Away in the lovable west, on a pastoral forehead of Wales, I was under a roof, here I was at rest, and they the prey of the gales. She to the black about air, to the breaker, the thickly falling flakes, to the throng that catches and quails, was calling, O Christ, Christ, come quickly. The cross to her she calls Christ to her, christens her wild worst best. The majesty, what did she mean? Breathe, arch and original breath. Is it love in her of the being as her lover had been? Breathed body of lovely death. They were else-minded then, altogether. The men woke thee with a we are perishing in the weather of Gennesareth. Or is it that she cried for a crown then, the keener to come at the comfort for feeling the combating keen? For how to the heart's cheering the down-dugged, ground-hugged gray hovers off, the jay-blue heavens appearing of pied and peeled May, blue beating and hoary glow height, or night, still higher, with belled fire in the moth-soft Milky Way. What by your measure is the heaven of desire, the treasure never eyesight got, nor was ever guessed, what for the hearing? No, but it was not these, the jading and the jar of the cart, time's tasking. It is fathers that asking for ease of the sodden with its sorrowing heart, not danger, electrical horror. Then further it finds the appealing of the passion is tenderer in prayer apart. Other, I gather, in measure, her mind's burden, in winds burly and beat of the indragonate seas. But how shall I make me room there, reach me a fancy come faster, strike you the sight of it, look at it loom there, thing that she, there then, the master, ipse, the only one, Christ, King, had. He was to cure the extremity where he had cast her. Do, deal, lord it with living and dead. Let him ride, her pride, in his triumph, dispatch and have done with his doom there. Ah, there was a heart right, there was a single eye. Read the unshapable shock, night, and knew the who and the why, wording it how, but by him that present and past, heaven and earth are word of, worded by. The Simon Peter of a soul, to the blast, Tarpeian fast, but a blown beacon of light. Jesu, heart's light. Jesu, maid son, what was the feast followed the night? Thou hadst glory of this nun. Feast of the one woman without stain, for so conceived, so to conceive thee is done. But here was heart throw, birth of a brain, word that heard, and kept thee and uttered thee outright. Well, she has thee for the pain, for the patience, but pity of the rest of them. Heart, go and bleed at a bitterer vein for the comfortless, unconfessed of them. No, not uncomforted, lovely felicitous providence, finger of a tender, of a feathery delicacy, the breast of the maiden could obey so, be a bell to, ring of it, and startle the poor sheep back. Is this shipwrack then a harvest? Does tempest carry the grain for thee? I admire thee, master of the tides, of the yore flood, of the year's fall, the recurve and the recovery of the gulf's sides, the girth of it, and the wharf of it, and the wall, staunching, quenching ocean of emotionable mind, ground of being, and the granite of it, past all grasp God, throned behind death, with a sovereignty that heeds but hides, bodes but abides. With a mercy that outrides the all of water, an ark for the listener, for the lingerer with a love glides lower than death and the dark, a vein for the visiting of the past prayer, pent in prison, the last breath penitent spirits, the uttermost mark, our passion-plunged giant risen, the Christ of the Father, compassionate, fetched in the storm of his strides. Now burn, newborn to the world, double-natured name, the heaven-flung, heart-fleshed, maiden-furled, miracle in Mary of flame. Mid-numbered he in three of the thunder throne, not a doomsday dazzle in his coming, nor dark as he came, kind, but royally reclaiming his own. A released shower, let flash to the shire, not a lightning of fire hard hurled. Dame, at our door drowned, and among our shoals, remember us in the roads, the heaven haven of the reward. Our King back, oh, upon English souls. Let him Easter in us, be a dayspring to the dimness of us, be a crimson cresseted east, more brightening her rare dear Britain as his reign rolls, pride, rose, prince, hero of us, high priest, our hearts, charities, hearths, fire, our thoughts, chivalries, throngs, Lord.
The music from this episode was from Love Sentences by Julian Cassia,
Waiting by Brianna Tam,
Journey by Sid Acharya, Tuesday by Ija Alsina,
Cicada Killer by IDOK.
Cicada
Killer
by IDOK,
Serenity by Enzo Belomo, and Pure Land by Eva. The sound design and editing is by Nate Shepherd.
You can get more poetry from the Rabbit Room
By subscribing to our newsletter.
Subscribing
Subscribing to our newsletter. At rebelroompoetry.substack.com.
And
rebelroompoetry.substack.com.
I think they got that.